Welcome to the trade floor recap for November 29th. Today we're going to dive into some amazing trades. This week was very busy, very busy week. It seems to be picking up again. Last week was a little slower. Last Friday we had a couple plays that day due to some over the Thanksgiving holiday news. So first off, we have MRNA, and it was picking up steam pre-market on Friday right here, and then it was a dip buy before the open, even potentially on this pre-market break right here, this breakout. And clearly there was a support in this level in the 350s. So I would have been selling before that level, before this. So in the high 340s around here, that's where I would have been selling. And it had some calls. There were calls available on it, and those did fairly well. The second trade that day was UAL. The reason I chose UAL as opposed to other airlines was because UAL was gapping down the most. The weakest one tends to continue to be the weakest one. And this one would have shorted at the open with probably, considering the puts, this support break here at just under 43. That was the key level. So this is a support crack short. You can't hold, so you short it, and my target was 40 because this was previous support in the past. Always want to get out just before because we know that targets don't usually get met perfectly, and you don't want to be in a trade that order was at 40.22. Obviously you could intend to short it over the weekend. There's just so much that could happen over the weekend that this one was really nail and bill. This was on Friday, which was a shorter day, so market ended at 1 p.m. No point holding over the weekend. There could be other news that would affect it a lot. Usually shorting over the weekend is a bad idea. I don't like doing it. The CEO was talking about the product, and he was saying that it wasn't going to be as effective, so mRNA gapped down. Now there was a short opportunity here that I took in the 360 bounce. You see gap down, so the inclination is to chase, but you really don't want to do that. Chasing is bad. You're going to get a poor risk reward almost all the time. It's really tough to chase on shorts, especially support crack shorts on really big stocks like this. So instead of chasing, you just wait for the bounce. My ideal risk reward is around 2.5 to 1 to 3 to 1. So I wait until the stock meets my ideal risk reward. So in this case, I would have been that was the previous day's close also, and it got in just around 360. And my target on this one was that 330 was a pretty big support level on that breakout day right here. So this was the support level here at 330, and that's where I wanted to go. So that was my goal. What happened here was I assumed it was going to fade. It didn't really fade. Instead, it had this afternoon bounce. And because of that, I got stopped out because I just lowered my stop. I got stopped out. It's okay. It eventually worked out. Puts on it. There were puts available. You could have done really well. I just got stopped out and I just gave up on it because I don't want to overtrade and if something doesn't work out. You could have also done a similar play on BNTX. Had this run right here, much like mRNA had. And very overextended. The only difference is it wasn't as good as a play because it didn't have that negative news. This was a Chinese scam pump. So Aero Clean Technologies, AERC. They started dumping this in the morning. Big dumps like this, I love a good dump. Trying to dip buy it after 11 a.m. I think I tried dip buying around here. This bounce turned into a fade. It just kept getting halted on the downside. Tried dip buying again. Probably this one it just faded down. So I tried 2 times. What that told me was that there was just so many reload sellers that the chance of it actually bouncing was just so low that it just wasn't worth the risk to keep doing it. So I just gave up on it, but it actually sold off just so much. It had a massive sell off, dropped over 87% from its highs, which is incredibly massive. That's a really big drop. That drop was so big, it ended up having a dead count bounce. Now, this is not my type of play, but it did end up bouncing almost 100% off its bottom. So that would have been really good. Just the fading the reload sellers, that makes it a no for me. I wouldn't have played this regardless. If I waited till the bottom was in, I wouldn't have played this regardless, just because those reload sellers are not good. They're not good for bounce potential. This is just an exception. This is an exception. This doesn't usually happen. I think just because it sold off so damn hard, it just had a bounce in it. It's a fresh IPO. That's probably the reason for that. This was a brand new IPO. Now, sometimes this happens on brand new IPOs. So this is an example of that, it just kept going up and halting, going up and halting, up and halting, and then finally it tops out. After it tops out, now it just starts selling off and halting, selling off and halting, selling off and halting. I dip bought this when I saw that it had some bounce potential. I'm not gonna lie, I did dip buy this little consolidation zone here just because there was a green candle, but that ended up getting lower, so I cut it quick. Then I ended up getting it on the actual reversal here, and that was a pretty good dip buy. And then I sold it like just before VWAP, so you can't see VWAP here, but VWAP at that time was around 7, so I sold it just under 7 because I know these bounce really quick and pull back. This actually ended up pulling back, but bouncing way higher. This is pretty much a 100% winner from the bottom. If you got in from the bottom, it's around 410, and then it bounces to just under 9. That's 100%. And that is a crazy big return. Watch tape because reversal is so quick and it's going to halt. So you got to have your order ready, and when you see that indicator, you got to send it off. You got to have your order ready already. You got to really be patient. It's better to wait too late than to get it too early. If you get it too early, you might have to cut, and that might be a pretty big loss because it just moves so quickly. Volume spike, ideally, this had these 2 green candles in a row. That's another indicator, having a green candle. Volume spike, having the bounce finally cross the trend line. Here, connect the top of the wicks of the candles on the downside. See when it finally bounces. This was a really good trade. This is what the setup should look like. ARC, definitely too many reload selling. The halts kind of tricked me at the time, but this is what the chart on this side of the place should look like. The supernova halter panic. AMC, as we know, is a meme stock. The support level here that it cracked was 33.70. I'm taking in this low and this low as a crack support. Now, I was very modest with my target. I was just aiming for it to go down to 32. 32 is literally like the next minor support. The only reason I chose 32 is because it's a whole number. I know that AMC does have a lot of buyers, dip buyers that can squeeze really quickly. So that's why I was aiming for only 32. Now, because I was only aiming for 32, I had a very tight stop. So in this case, I did not short this original crack right here. I wanted to wait for it to bounce. So, I got it on the bounce right here. I believe it was holding under view app also. But what happened was I ended up getting stopped out pre-market the following day. So it just a little higher than my stop pre-market, so I got shaken out. So I just ignored it. I assumed because it cracked support, it would fade the following day. But what happened was that it had a bounce pre-market, shook me out, and then just fading and then really panicking. My target was here at 32, which is very, very small compared to this entire panic right here. This day it actually did pull. So this was a great short opportunity from this level to this level, but then it ended up going a lot lower, and so it had this massive panic. And usually I just ignore these types of trades, but it gave me indicators of what I was looking for to consider dip buying it. So the first thing is that it cracked a bunch of support levels, and it cracked below this low, so that caught my eye. My dip buy was predicated on not only it cracking below that support level, which is 28.9, but I was looking for it to have a volume spike. So volume spikes are important because that tells me that stops are getting hit, automatic orders are getting filled. That just indicates capitulation for me. That's very important if you are looking to dip buy something and you want to make sure you catch the bottom. So when I see that happen, I do not enter on the volume spike candle because there could be another one that comes up after, right? So right after the volume spike candle, I want the next candle to close green. So I'll wait for it to close green, and I also look for the stock to cross this downtrend line. So not only does the next candle after um, the volume spike candle have to close green, it also has to cross over. So I just waited for the price to cross over. I got in. I was comfortable dip buying it with a larger size because it was so liquid. And from the day highs to the bottom, this stock had about a 24% panic. And for panics like that, I look for around a 10% bounce. So that's where I was selling. Price is over 29.5 because that's around a 10% bounce. And I know there's so many dip buyers on the AMC that they're going to just grind the price up. So I had a bunch of orders between 29.5 and 31 because I looked at the chart here. I saw there was a lot of resistance at 31. These bounced there kind of clips at 31. So I had a bunch of orders between 29.5 and 31, and it worked out great. This was a very rare play. This doesn't happen a lot, but I kind of know when big stocks like this have these big drops and show me clean panics like happen here. Red candle, red candle, red candle, red candle, green candle, red candle, red candle, red candle, volume spike, and then you have the green candle. It's very tempting. I know the setup. It almost acts like an OTC warning panic. All these criteria kind of have to add up because in this case, this is not like a newbie trade because you have to know that this is a meme stock. There's a ton of buyers, big market cap. You gotta know not to buy any panic, only just really, really big panics. Could have been great. They did bounce a good amount. The only issue is that this panic happened in power hour. Well, you do not want to be holding calls on a short-term play like this, a panic dip buy overnight. You don't know where it's going to open the following day. It's really hard to predict because this is such a quick trade that call is probably not even a good idea. This is a pretty big stock looking at the chart. It does have a lot of clean moves. where it holds certain levels. If you look on this daily chart, you can see, for example, this candle kind of topped out at around 80, 81. This candle, same thing. So I do like that. And then there is a support level here where it tested 98 here once. And then more recently, it tested it again, but this time going 97.5. And then I was just looking for a big crack under there. This is a inverse cup and handle pattern right here. So that definitely contributed, and you do see this crack really pulling midday. So I literally just shorted the crack, and I was using high of day at the start as my risk, and I slowly moved it down to this bounce, to this bounce. Then eventually I saw that 100 was acting as a very strong support level. Support becomes resistance. So then I used a stop just over 100 to risk off of, and my target was 90 and a little bit below 90, like mid 80s, just because 90 is a round whole number, and I thought I could also pull below it, pull to like 81 ideally. So at the end of the day, there was going to be earnings, so I covered before earnings, because you never know which way earnings are going to go. The risk reward here wasn't very great either, but the chart was just so good. Next setup here is DWAC. Now this happened at the very end of the day. I'm not really looking to trade at the very end, but it just happened randomly, and I was at my desk to see it. So DWAC released a PR, and DWAC was just such a big runner in October that if it was any other stock, pretty much I wouldn't have considered it. It runs a lot, so that was the indicator to get in. Fortunately, I did not get it right when the PR hit. That would have been most ideal buying it into one of these two candles, because it halted into the close. So I ended up getting some in the mid 40s after hours, and on this stock, sure was a bit of a chase, but I knew it just had so much momentum, and my target was in the high 50s. I know 60 is such a big resistance level. Support becomes resistance, so it used to be a support level, now it's a resistance level. So my target isn't at 60. I want to sell before it. So I'm aiming to sell like 57s. I'm aiming to sell in the 54s. So that was my target. So I did that. The issue with holding it overnight, even though it was such a big runner, it was also a one and done chart. Had a first green day, gapped up, and then just pretty much just sold off. Right? You see charts like that, you can't trust it to gap up the following day. Sometimes you get this big move, you just got nail and bail. It's that type of stock. Had a similar thing on PHUN. Now, I'm not sure if they had a PR themselves or it was just a sympathy play to DWAC. I didn't look into it too much, but it also had like so much momentum. Now, this was actually the better pick, which was a little surprising. Unfortunately, the next day, it just faded. I think the market was fading hard too. DWAC, let's see, just to compare it. DWAC was, just kind of faded the following day, so it wasn't really good. Swing the next day, PHUN did gap up a bit pre-market, but just faded. The issue with this one, it was a liquid and slow. So I had to consider how much volume was actually trading. I do not want to be trading more than 1% of the volume during my morning panic dip buy, so I stuck to that rule. A position of 1,000 shares, that was the limit because that was 1% of the volume. I do like the clear trends in the chart where you see, it actually, has multiple red days and a couple green days, multiple red days. Kind of like that. Also was moving very slowly. This was definitely one where you had to be watching the level too. That was so important. And I will put a couple clips of the level 2 on this trade so you know just how it trades. There were some minutes where it did not have any trades. Like, that's also trades. But for me, it was tradable just because of the volume and just because the level 2 was so readable and the chart is fairly clean despite the little minutes where it doesn't trade. Another thing I liked was just because of this chart, during this day, it was just very oversold. Like, it had like 10 bread days in a row, like something crazy. So once I saw the level 2 turn here around 312, I got in. It was like reading level 2 in slow motion. It was pretty crazy. I had time to think about it. So I ended up getting in. I took profits like fairly quickly. I got out at like 370 because this one had a just around a 28% panic from these pre-market prints. That tells me it's going to bounce at least 90% most of the time. And the reason for that is because I'm treating this as like a very oversold OTC morning panic, and that's different if it was just like it's like a random morning panic, or like it's moving sideways for a number of days and then it panics. Just because this is oversold, the bounce tends to be a lot bigger. So that's why my target was a little more aggressive. So it's on 370s. But if you're reading the level 2, you could have just not sold until the mid fours. Because the level 2 is so clean, you're able to do that. Obviously, I trade very risk averse. So, met my target. I'm cool. I don't want to play any games, but I'll watch it, just see how it works out after I sell. So I was very surprised and made up to, almost 450 and that red green test, and then just kind of faded off there. But this was a great OTC morning panic dip buy. Now we're going to watch some level 2 on ONPH just to show how it trades, just to show how slow it trades and how predictable the level 2 can be.